I'm making a video game with underwater mechanics. In this devlog,
Final level. Steam Next Fest Prep. Credits minigame. Leaderboard fixes. Playtest feedback. A bit ago, one of my playtesting friends mentioned they had trouble telling chests apart since the colors don't have enough contrast for them. I had some variation of the chest with white bands, so I thought about just using those same styles and recoloring them. Consensus was that it was good enough and distinguishable, so I proceeded to swap them throughout the game. I started by replacing the prefabs for the gatherable chests, since that would tackle most of the game. Then I changed them on the level complete screen. Since this screen shares the progression bar, that would also update on the map. Lastly, I updated all the other map related images. Maybe I should have made these images a prefab at some point. Since I'll be participating in October's Steam Next Fest, it made sense to prepare a demo build. First, I worked on an unlock rule that would restrict a level based on its app ID. I also updated the lock panel to properly handle that new rule type. Since I was touching the lock panel, I also changed the way the any number of chests rule is represented. Then I worked on making the demo reveal both worlds at once when the Shallow Shores milestone is reached. Making the credit scene was something I was really excited about, so I proceeded to tackle this next. My plan when I started the game was this would be a giant chasm where you just can swim down and break the different names of all the people involved. I started by literally copy-pasting the player movement and deleting parts that weren't going to be used, just to keep the movement the same. Then I copied some of the game management objects after unpacking the prefab with the goal of letting the custom credits logic script pause the credits game. Then I worked on a prototype to hash out my idea of having text be breakable and the player scoring points for it. I wanted to have some rolling text that just wasn't the names displaying on the side. I spent a lot of time playing with the Cinemachine confiner to try to do what I wanted, with no success. As an alternative, I created a banner fixed to the top of the screen that would roll through sentences on an interval. Then I played with a basic setup to make the text disappear and play a particle effect. I also worked on pulling the particle system. Maybe this is premature optimization. Since I want the player to be able to move around in a minigame, I played with scrolling the text through the banner at the top. Certain names will have a different sprite for their effect, so I worked on making a system that would support picking sprites randomly from a set. Each text points to a scriptable object which defines valid sprite options to pick. The minigame's objective is to simply have the player break every single name. I made a small score system that just increases when you destroy a name so the player has a goal while the credits roll by. At this stage, I hooked up the milestone system and dialogue system to the credit scene. With the prototype in a good state, I proceeded to make tiles for the level. I want this level to still have the 3-tone formula but be very simple, so I started with a tile based on the dark blue tones. Since I want there to be some diagonal parts, I also made diagonal tiles too. I hadn't made some in quite a while, so I used the previous tile set as a template to remember how to generate them. I made lots of sketches of long tunnels, but they all felt boring, so I started to draw other shapes. An idea I liked was having the anchor with a long chain go all the way through the level, but have the names spread throughout. This felt like a good compromise that I could make more exciting than a straight vertical area, so I went with this shape. Like every other level, I started by blocking out a rough shape based on the sketch. As always, then the collider tiles and the filler tiles were set. The anchor will have all available chests displayed by level order and color, so I made a generator that would populate the chains in order and let me specify the spacing of chests. I did not complete this all the way, since I still need to gather the names of everyone in the credits and make the credits roll text, so you'll just have to play the game to see how that turned out. In contrast with the credits minigame, I had very little inspiration to make the final level. I knew I wanted to incorporate tiles from the other worlds, but didn't have much direction other than that. I made lots of sketches until I settled for one that had most of the elements I wanted. Going through the motions of level building, I started by blocking out each area. Since I had some weird shapes with my blockout, I needed to check that the tiles would support those shapes. I also switched to using colors for each of the sections so I would sort of have an idea of where each tile color would go. I did a speed test of the initial blockout, and it felt a bit too small compared to other levels, so I made some minor tweaks. I thought I could also extend the time by adding enemies in critical paths, so I carried on with the current shape. Then I did a run through it to ensure I could still complete it. I did take damage, which does not pass the no-hit test. For completion, I did end up having a run without getting hit before proceeding with level art. Just like all levels, I then added the collider tiles, trying to keep as much of the shape of the blocked out level as possible. This level mixes tiles from all worlds, so I spent some more time in the filler section laying out the different colors. For the final test, I had to complete a no-hit run with all of the art complete. Here's a high-level overview of what the final level looks like. With this level complete and ready for playtest, I then typed the dialogue and milestone for it. Hooch was nice enough to lend me his time and give me some feedback, and I think it highlights some of the things I felt while making it. If you look at the high-level overview, there's a huge gap in the bottom, so it's very bland. The shipwreck's chest is also a very easy grab, but overall, it doesn't feel like a special level. Here's some concrete ideas I have to change it, and I'll use parts from the other levels in that world as inspiration. The Coral Castle's worlds have some diagonal shapes that are challenging for players, so I'll try to include that on the tower on the right, or make the current section harder. The shipwrecks levels have a zigzagging pattern inside them that I want to incorporate in that section, so that section will make it bigger. I also want to remove the freebie chest and maybe place it on a mast like in level 6. For the ruins area, I want to have 2 or 3 distinct sections, so the Quetzals will be split and a section will look similar to the left side of the level 4 in that world. The entrance could use a little bit more challenge, so I'll tweak it to have stalactites and stalagmites that align and maybe make the vertical spacing smaller. I might also extend it a bit so both the stalactites and some mine-based strap fit. Hooch pointed out that my menu felt very bland, and that will be the first impression on Next Fest. I originally had plans to commission some art for it, but never got around to it. To make it less bland, I tried an idea of having bubbles on the background so there's at least some movement to the menu. Then I worked on generating fish sprites that would swim across the screen. After adding some randomization to the swim patterns, this is what the menu will look like for Steam Next Fest. Watching people playtest the game and react to their score not updating was always a soul-crushing moment, especially when they spend 15 minutes trying to beat a level. This happens because Steam has a rate limit of uploads, and since every level contains 2 boards, a player could exhaust the limit by completing 5 levels completely. The first alternative I thought to try was a naive implementation that would run every 15 minutes and attempt to resynchronize the score if it was better. While working on this, I had an idea to try to use a file as a durable queue of boards that had to be synchronized. In order to track what needed to be synchronized, I created a simple struct that has all the parts needed to identify a leaderboard. Since the leaderboards also store the details, I had to update the best run data struct to include those. When a board fails to upload for any reason, a request to resynchronize it is saved on that file. Every 15 minutes, the game will check if it needs to run some synchronization operation and take a snapshot of the level data before trying to synchronize the values. The synchronization operation downloads the current score, compares, and only uploads when the current local version is better. Only if the upload succeeds does the request get removed from the file. I haven't caught the bug while testing, so I hope this is enough to at least not lose someone's score. I do plan to add a disclaimer about this for the finished game, so players know that the game attempts to upload their best score even when an upload fails. Some players mentioned the first world feeling possibly too hard and could cause some to abandon the game quickly. A suggestion I got to improve that was to make the stalactites a bit more forgiving. Since I have the long stalactite shapes already, I created physics shapes for them that don't just follow the black pixels as the border. For the new version, I made an edge collider that flattens out instead of following the peaks, which should be more forgiving. The prior version would also hit you in empty areas based on the shape. While playing, you can definitely notice that the stalactite doesn't hit you when you immediately touch it. Even if players notice, I think they'll still avoid going inside the sprite, so this is fine. Then I went through the levels and replaced all the stalactites. The enemy palette and alignment buttons I have for these game objects made that process much faster. Working on the credit scene gave me an idea to improve the tutorial by having a dedicated place for the hint text that wasn't just in the middle of the screen. I made a panel that would act as instructions that Bosley gives you. A bug I recently discovered, and have had for a long time, is that the death screen has a close menu button. No clue how I never noticed it until now. The fix was simple. I just had to reuse the quit dialog and change it to be a quit button. The level complete screen had a bug where the continue button doesn't focus when you complete the level. This bug was caused by the panel referencing an older button from when I first made the screen, which is hidden because I was afraid to delete it. Updating that reference fixes the bug. A long-standing playtest feedback item was the level selection screen warning you about needing to restart the level for settings to take effect. I updated that panel to let me control whether the warning displays or not, and take that setting in all scenes that aren't the regular level. With all those updates, I made a build and published it so it is ready for Steam next fast. That's it for this devlog. My focus for the next part will be improve the final level, complete the credits scene, work on Steam achievements, address some more playtest feedback items. If you want to support me, please visit the Don't Drown store page linked in the description and add the game to your wishlist. Also, if you're interested in checking out the demo will be live for Steam Next Fest on October 14th. Until next time.